Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Bitter, and today I have an exciting guest interview for you. Today's guest is Aleksandr Sorokin. So for those who aren't aware, Aleksandr Sorokin has been on an absolute tear the last couple of years, breaking all sorts of records in the ultra marathon world. His main focus are more runnable events. So he targets a lot of timed events from 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours to kind of some of the more standard distances like 100 kilometers and 100 miles and things like that. Since he started focusing on ultra marathon running, he has had an incredible journey. So a lot of people have learned about him in the last couple of years, but he has actually been around for a little bit. And I even learned some stuff that I was unaware of while doing some research for this episode. I didn't know, but at the time when he was kind of first getting into the sport, we were both racing the World 100-kilometer Championships in 2014 and then again in 2015. For those who want some context on that, in 2014, I finished sixth at that championships. I believe he was 33rd. The following year, I had to drop out. I got actually rushed to the hospital. I had some sort of like reaction to presumably like the pollen or something in the air there. And he ended up making a big improvement from his prior year's race and finishing in the top 10 there. With that said, Sorokin was just getting started at that point. His journey is incredible. He actually was a fairly competitive kayaker earlier in his life and eventually stepped away from that for work-related stuff and ended up gaining a bunch of weight. He got up to about 100 kilometers. Got up to 100 kilograms. And from there decided, hey, I need to get control of my health. I need to stop drinking. I need to stop smoking. I need to get in shape and start running. So he started running, did a half marathon, and then eventually started thinking about doing some longer stuff and ran a 100-kilometer in those early years in 2013. He ended up having some more success as he progressed in the sport, but nothing near what he's done recently. He went on and won the 24-hour World Championships as well as the Spartathlon. But in 2021, in April, he kind of burst onto the scene in a little bit of a bigger way by breaking what was at the time my 100-mile and 12-hour world records, which was what really put him on my radar, by running 11 hours, 14 minutes, and 56 seconds for 100 miles and covering just over 105 miles for 12 hours. He did this at the Centurion Track Invitational in London. And from there, he just started churning out record performance after record performance. And the way he did it is still fascinating to me, where from that 100-mile world record, he pivoted and focused on the 24-hour race, where he decided to go after one of the most stout world records the ultra marathon community had at the time, which was held by a guy named Yannis Kouros. Yannis had run just over 188 miles in 24 hours. And Aleksandr went to that 24-hour race and put up 192 and a half miles on that. After that record, he decided that he wanted to take another shot at 24 hours. He thought he had more improvements to be made, but the way he wanted to do it is he wanted to do it at the European 24-hour championships. So he went on and broke the 100-mile and 12-hour world records again, this time being the first human to go under 11 hours, running 10 hours, 51 minutes, and 39 seconds, and then getting just past 110 miles for the 12-hour mark. After that, stepping down in distance again to 100 kilometers and ran 6 hours, 5 minutes, and 41 seconds for that 100 kilometers, and actually splitting 98.496 kilometers for 6 hours. So for those of you running math in your head, that 100-kilometer pace is sub 6 minute miling for 62 and a half miles or 100 kilometers. His 100-mile and 12-hour world records are right around a 6:30 minute per mile pace. He wasn't done yet. he's still the European Championships ago. So those who've been following the ultra running news will realize he went there and put up an insane number, hitting 198.6 miles, just missing 200 miles. But as you'll find out through this interview, there may be some room on the table for him to hit that 200-mile marker. I think we will see that sooner or later. So for this interview, we jumped into a whole bunch of different stuff between just like how he got into the sport, why he chose the races he did, what he plans to do in the future, some of the specifics about his most recent training block, how he structures that sort of thing, and just the attention to detail that he has with his training, or the focus he puts into it with some of his big training buildups where he's oftentimes hitting over 200 miles per week. And it's not just 200 miles of shuffling around. He's oftentimes doing these 50-kilometer plus runs at like mid to low 6-minute pace. So he's definitely putting in a ton of work at a very high volume. I was interested to hear about kind of the reasoning for that, because when you get into volume like that, at even for someone as talented as Sorokin has to be in order to do what he's done, that's a lot of stress and impact on the body. And the reason that running tends to be a little bit different than some of the other endurance sports is that impact of running. So when we talk about things like swimming, biking, skiing, and stuff like that, huge endurance component there, a lot less impact. So oftentimes those athletes are able to put in larger volume training blocks and stay injury free and recover and improve. Whereas Sorokin seems to have found a path forward in terms of being able to do some of that sort of volume relatively consistently so far. We'll see how that goes going forward, if he'll be able to continue doing that. He is an interesting person to talk to for sure. And I had a lot of fun getting to know him a little bit better, sharing his story a bit here and talking about his records, how he got to them. And I know a lot of people have this question: what's next and what does he think he can do? He shared some of the what's next, some exciting stuff that you'll want to hear about what he's got on his race plans going forward, as well as some of the numbers he thinks he can produce. So definitely pay close attention. One thing I will mention is Aleksandr Sorokin has recently learned English. So he's still working on becoming a little more fluent at it. So this interview went really well, all things considered. He was able to answer the questions pretty fluently as far as I can tell. And I did send him a list of the topics and questions we were going to go over ahead of time so that he would be able to kind of prepare a little bit. And he did a very good job. But I did want to do a little more thorough intro here just so you had some background on him and we would be able to get into some of those details and not have to pivot too often, since for him to kind of process and then translate in his head to English is going to be a little more difficult than some of the other guests. So I wanted to get that stuff kind of out there and informed before we go. I would love to have him back on down the road to dive into some topics that we talked about a little more deeper and just get his take on some other things. I know I'll have some follow-up questions once I kind of think about some of his answers in more detail. And then when listeners start sending in things that they want to hear more about. So that will be something on the top of my mind going forward after getting this one out there. All right, before we get rolling with Aleksandr, just a couple quick announcements. For those of you who are unaware, there is a show Patreon page where I do early release and ad-free episodes there. So if you want to support the show and I get access to the episodes before they're released to all the other podcast platforms and YouTube, you can head over to the show Patreon page. You can access that at the show landing page, which is just zachbitter.com/HPO. A couple of guests that are sitting up there right now include Stuart Chutter. Stuart Chutter is an ultramarathon runner, obstacle course racer, marathon runner. He's also a farmer up in Canada. He has a regenerative farm that he has been working on for about 6 years. And he has all sorts of cool stuff there, including an outdoor gym with like squat racks and things like that where he works out. He's done some really interesting things. Like he prepared for a marathon eating nothing but food he grew on his farm, and then competed in that marathon eating only food from his farm. He's also done similar things like that where he's only consuming food from local farms around his area and stuff like that. Just an interesting guy. I wanted to hear what got him interested in regenerative agriculture or agriculture in general, how that fits into his ultra running endeavors and that sort of thing. Fun guy to talk to. So that one's up there on the Patreon page right now. And then also Boyd Myers. Boyd Myers is a little bit of a less traditional endurance athlete. He's an Air Force vet, former bodybuilder. He actually owned a gym for a while when he was doing the bodybuilding stuff, but he ended up gaining a bunch of weight and then deciding, hey, I got to get healthy, lost 75 pounds through triathlon. Now he's participating in the Gold Star Initiative, which gives veterans the chance to team up and honor Gold Star families by carrying an American flag during the run portion of select Ironman and Ironman 70.3 events and presenting it to the local Gold Star family at the finish line. So Boyd's done things like just a spontaneous, I'm just going to run 100 miles today on a whim, to I'm going to run a full Ironman the next day, followed by a half Ironman and the Gold Star Initiative in the process with that sort of stuff. So Boyd is the untraditional endurance athlete. He's sitting up there on the Patreon page right now as well. If you want to support the show, but don't want to join the show Patreon page, you can also do that through one-time donations at zachbitter.com/HPO. If you want to support the show non-monetarily, liking, sharing, subscribing the podcast episodes to your friends, families, and followers goes a long way to help me grow the audience and continue producing this content. So if you do enjoy an episode and you want to support, sharing on social media is a great way to do that. If you are looking for a little bit of extra support in your endurance efforts, I have a wide range of coaching options that range from pre-made plans following my philosophy, as well as one-on-one personalized plans where I will get into the weeds with you and help you solve all the problems of preparing and executing your chosen race. I also have consultation and collaboration options as well. You can find details to that on my website at zachbitter.com. Also, finally, before we get rolling here, this episode's sponsors and all the sponsors of the HPO podcast can be found at zachbitter.com/HPO sponsors. If one of the show sponsors has a product that you would find useful for your lifestyle, getting their stuff through the show links helps support the show. This episode's show sponsors include Ultimate Direction and their hydration packs and bottles, as well as LMNT and their electrolyte mix. Ultimate Direction creates top quality hydration products and apparel. Their hydration products range from bottles, handhelds, waist packs, and belts, vests, and full packs and backpacks. All are designed to fit comfortably and securely so you can head out on your run, workout, hike, or adventure with all the proper equipment to keep you prepared and hydrated. Some of my favorites that I often use while training and racing include their Race Vest 6.0, Utility Belt Plus, and their Clutch handheld water bottle. I like the handhelds for shorter outings or outings I can easily refill, belts for humid weather runs where I may need a bit more supplies, and their vests for longer outings in drier weather climates. If you need to gear up for your outdoor adventure, run, or simply need a handheld water bottle or backpack for your gym workout of choice, you can do so and support the Human Performance Outliers podcast at the same time by clicking through the links in the show notes or at zachbitter.com/HPO sponsors. Element makes an electrolyte supplement with no sugar. Each packet is loaded with 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. They come in convenient single-serve packets that make them great for bringing along for a run, hike, going to the gym, or while traveling. My go-tos are the citrus flavor and the newly restocked watermelon flavor for my long runs and post-run rehydration, as well as their chocolate flavor, which I love to add in my morning coffee with a little bit of creamer. Tastes great, and it's a fun way to start the day for me. If you are hesitant or would like to try out Element first, before you purchase, they are offering a flavor sample pack with one of each of their flavors for free to anyone who uses the HPO URL. If you want to check them out and support HPO along the way, you can head over to drinklmnt.com/HPO. That's drinklmnt.com/HPO. Links can be found in the show notes as well as at zachbitter.com/HPO sponsors. Aleksandr, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Zach, that you invite me to your podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's my pleasure. It's just been an absolute honor to talk to you right now, and then as well as follow what you've done in the sport the last couple of years. And it just seems like every time you do something, it's not too long after that you one up it or take another step in the right direction. So I kind of want to dive into a little bit about what kind of got you to where you are today, because I think your backstory is very interesting, how you kind of got into running in the first place. Because I think when people see what you have done, they probably think this guy must have been running since he was born, essentially. But what sports did you do in your youth? I know you had a background in kayaking, I believe, at university. Was this your kind of primary activity, or did you do other things when you were younger that kind of got you into being active?
My in US, my main sport was kayaking. I was sprinter. So in from 1994 until 2005, I was kayaker. So my results was so. I was youth champion of Lithuania, but in world arena I was middle of results. So in 2005 I get injured, so I finished with my sport. Began easy life, lot of beer, junk food, smoke, cigarettes, and so on. So my weight was growing, and 2013, I understand that my weight is 100 kilos. I don't know how it in pounds. It's about 220. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that I need to change my life because it's terrible. I can see in the mirror my face like this. So I began running because running is easier way to lose to a weight. Not need special things, just shoes and go outside and run. So my first competition was half marathon. I finished that, and I understand that I can back to my bad life. So I need to find my goal, my motivation. And one day when I walk in the park, I found invitation for 100 kilometers running competition in my country, and then and understand that it will be my goal. I want to prepare for this. I want to finish that competition. Just finish. I began prepare. It was left about 50 days before the race, so I need to run more. That day I finished that 100. It was terrible. I was painful. I can't walk about 1 or 2 weeks, but I was very happy because I finished that big job. Maybe after that, I in love in this ultra running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great answer, and I think it kind of gets into some of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about today. And one of them was I was reading about some of your background, and it did say that in 2013 you ran a 100 kilometer in 8 hours, 37 minutes, and 4 seconds, which is a respectable time, especially for somebody who's coming in it from a weight loss journey, I would say. Today, though, your 100 kilometer PR is a world record, and it's 6 hours and 5 minutes. So you've managed to take 2 hours and 32 minutes off of that first 100 kilometer race that you did. Was there anything that kind of sparked your running in a way to make that much of an improvement, or was it just simply being patient with the process and kind of like picking up goals along the way that has you where you are nearly a decade later running the times you're running?
Can you explain, please?
Yeah. So like when you ran that first 100 kilometer and finished that race in 8 hours and 37 minutes, what was kind of your next goal after that? I
Okay.
understand that you probably have had a lot of different goals between today and back then, but what was kind of your next step when you finished that first one? Did you decide I want to keep doing this, or what did you have any hesitation about whether that was something you wanted to keep doing?
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Uh, in that competition, Gediminas Grinius, maybe you know this Lithuanian trail runner. Uh, put broke a Lithuanian record. It was 7 hours and 7 minutes. So I thought that time that average guy broke the Lithuanian record. If he did, I want to do like that. I want to try next time to beat his record. So I began to preparing, and next year the second 100 was 7 hours and 20 minutes. Uh, it's almost a record, but the same year in the autumn, I went to my first world championship of 100. It was in Holland. Don't remember name of the city. And result was 650. So I beat him, and now it's my ultra running was born. And after that, next year I want to find other 100 competition, but can't find good ones. So my friends invite me. Let's go to 24 hours running. It will be World Championship in Torino, Italy, to 15th or to 16th, I don't remember. And that moment, and I was shocked. But I first time heard about 24 hours running at all. So how people can run 24 hours without stop? It's crazy, guys. But say, okay, let's do it. So my first 24 hours was in Torino. It was 242 kilometers, and after that, of course, I 1 week or 2 weeks can run, can walk. It was terrible race, painful, suffering, and so on. But I understand that it's mine. I feel that I can do more than I did. Little by little, every year, my results was growing. Of course, sometimes I had some downhills. In 2017, I wanted to finish with my ultra running because my result was not good. Because before I ran to 260, then in that competition was 244, 242, maybe, I don't remember. I understand that so many works, so many kilometers was done and anything, no results. So understand that it's not for me. I want to change the job, go to Germany to work in Germany. So, but I was enlisted in Spartathlon. I need to run this competition. I understand that I will put the finish point on this competition, Spartathlon. So, and I won this Spartathlon, and I think, saved me from finish of my running because I understand that I run good. And next year I took a bronze medal from 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I have some questions that are coming up about Spartathlon and some of those other some of these type of events too that I'm curious about. But before we get into that, I do want to kind of jump into what I would consider kind of a big leap that you made kind of during your running career, obviously going from where you started to being a goal of trying to get into shape and lose some weight to winning the 24-hour world championships, finishing top 10 at the 100-kilometer world championships in Winschoten in 2015. And then ultimately also winning the Spartathlon in, I believe, what was 22 hours and 4 minutes, which is a pretty respectable time. But I think looking at your current records, people will wonder how fast can you run that course. But in 2021, before we get to that sort of stuff, you ran 11 hours, 14 minutes, and 56 minutes for 100 miles and just over 105 miles for 12 hours. As we've kind of talked about, you've had some success before that with that 24-hour world championship, top 10 finish at the World 100 kilometers, and then winning Spartathlon. But I think your 100-mile and 12-hour world records was probably a step above what you had done previously and put you closer to Yanis Kouros, who many considered before you entered the sport probably the best flat runner that we have seen in ultra marathon running. Uh, so what did you do differently to prepare for Centurion 100 in 2021 that kind of got you to be able to kind of take that next step? Was there something different in your training or your approach mentally? Did you do anything differently, or was this just kind of a progression of what your career would be?
After 2019, when I won a world championship, I understood that I not so bad in ultra runnings. So pandemic one begins. My job was closed, so I fully focused on running. Maybe this biggest part because my results was grown up. Then in 2020, before that, I ran alone. After 2020, Sebastian Bielabrzewski, it's a Poland guy from Polish. I have now a coach. He's coaching me. It's other part of my result. I think the best part is full running. I became a pro runner, and that I understand that my results grow up. I decided to broke Yozak. Sorry, your record. um, in 2021 in the spring, yeah, I tried to beat him. It was really good story because I ran just only 100 miles. Then when about 10 laps before the finish, organizer gives me a paper with words. I try to read, and there was, if you run until 12, you can beat in 12 hours world record. So first minds was, oh no, sorry, I'm tempo, I'm just finished my 100 and that's all. But after few laps, I understand that I never I beat myself every all my life that I don't finish and I keep running. So that day I beat two records.
Yeah, that is so funny that that was your experience. And this is off the questions I sent, but I have to share this story with you. When I ran my first track 100 miler, I had finished 100 miler before that, but it was the Western States 100, so it was a very different experience being in the on the trails. And I had that same thing. I was there to run 100 miles. I didn't even know there was a 12-hour like record. I didn't know that existed. So when I got to about 90 miles, the race director told me, "Hey, when you hit 100 miles, you're going to have some time left before 12 hours. So you should stay out here." And it was so funny because all for 90 miles that day, all I was thinking about was running 100 miles. And now all of a sudden I had this other thing in the back of my mind too about like seeing how far you can get in 12 hours. So that's funny that had that same thing kind of happened with you where you're so narrowly focused on what the goal was originally that that other side of it just wasn't really in the back of your mind until it became a reality that you were going to have some time left on the clock.
and after that, after this record, I understand that can I can try to beat Yanis Kouros 24 hours because 170 kilometers per 12 hours. It's just more 133 and record will be yours. So I began prepare, and that this year must be world championship somewhere. I don't remember where. In Romania, yes, Romania. But pandemic was began, so I changed my plan. I choose a Poland championship, and this year, 2021 in autumn, I beat Yanis Kouros to a new record was 309 kilometers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I think after you ran that 100 mile, people were thinking, well, what's next? What's next for Mr. Sorokin and his efforts on the ultra running circuit, and you did just that. You turned your direction towards Giannis's 24-hour world record, which many people would have considered to be unbreakable. I think records are rarely, if ever, unbreakable, but that one was probably one of the strongest world records that ultra running had at the time. And I was following that race when you did it. It was just really interesting to watch your pacing because it looked pretty similar to your pacing strategy for the 100-mile 12-hour world record you had ran, where you were maybe running a little bit faster than world record pace, but not a ton. And you just ran what I would consider a very, very kind of cleanly paced race that got you to, for the American listeners here, what ended up being 192.5 miles and going, just under 3 miles past Giannis's record in the past. When you crossed the line for that, was your first thought, I can go further, or were you thinking, okay, now I need to go back and run 100 miles again? What was your first experience when you first crossed that finish line and had that world record broken?
If I understand your question, when I finished, I understand that I don't show my maximum. I understand that I can improve that result much more. And that day, when I broke record, it was left about 40 minutes before the end. And motivation was gone, so pace going down. Like no motivation, no goals. So I just wanted to finish this race. And maybe you ask it for other goals. Can you explain again your question, please?
Yeah, like when you finished that 24-hour world record, did you think like I want to try some other events next, or did you think I'll probably try to break this record again or do this again? Like what was your first initial thought after crossing that finish line?
Yes. Next year was European Championship, so I understand that I need to do something. I need to prepare for this European Championship, but I need to have some races before, because European Championship will be in autumn. So I need to find races in spring, for example. And I choose 100. I never thought that I can beat 100 kilometers because I felt that I'm too slow to beat this distance. I thought that if you want to break 100, you need to run marathon faster than, for example, 220. But I don't know how, but I did. I broke the 100 kilometers mile. Before it was 100 miles. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember this year. It was very very busy. Yeah, very for me it was very boost my results. It's Kenyan camp. So I was 3 times this year before all main race in Kenya. So I had very good experience for top runners. So I understand, and I understood that I'm very, very slow. When you go to stadium to do fast training, you run maximum of your ability, and you hear the train of Kenyan guys just run through you. It was dismoralic. Oh, it's very hard to run. But Kenya give me a little boost to my result. So when I was first time in December, come back and had race in Israel, 100 miles and 12 hours. So that Kenyan camp possibly gives me that boost, and I broke that record again. Now it's 177, yes, 1 to 77 of 12 hours and 100 miles, 10:51.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that Kenya, it's boost for me. I need to go back again before European Championship and before 100. So as you know, the results show.
They
Yes.
definitely show. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about this because It sounds like when you broke Giannis's 24-hour world record, you kind of thought, I'm going to do this 24-hour at the European Championships and see if I can better it. And you knew you had to race in the meantime. Most people, when they do what you consider like a tune-up race or races in the process, they're not breaking world records when they do it. So I think that's the one of the interesting things about this story. And just to kind of fill in some of the stuff you talked about, like when runners compete at a world class level, they often kind of move up in distances over their career where, they might start out running shorter distance endurance events. And then as they age, they kind of just go a little longer and longer in their distance. But when you broke Giannis's 24-hour world record, you went down in distance. You went down to that 100-mile race that you talked about and ran 10:51:39 for 100 miles and then crossed past 110 miles for 12 hours, re-breaking your records in both of those. And then set your sights on that 100-kilometer where you ran a 6 hour essentially, and then also the 100K. Your 100K time was 6:05:41. Your 6 hour split was 98.496 kilometers, all world records. You answered why the reason for that. You were essentially looking to put in some races and maybe do some speed work and preparation for ultimately what you just recently did. And I think that's just really interesting that that's how that played out. And I think it makes a lot of sense when I think of the training processes that I like to do. I do like to do faster stuff earlier before I do something longer, because I think that is going to be a valuable component to your fitness. And then ultimately, when you have, like, say, 8 weeks before a race, doing things that are very specific to what you'll be doing on your goal race is like, that's the time to really get that nice and sharp. And it seems like you sort of followed that trajectory over the course of a year and just happened to have a lot of success with some of those shorter races along the way.
um, can you explain that what difference between 124 hours preparing?
Yeah, I just think like the relative pace, maybe less so the 100-mile, but definitely like the 100K, because like your pace for the 100K would have been like sub 6 minute mile pace. So like you're racing at a higher intensity for 100K than you would for 24 hours, where you're averaging 7:15 minutes per mile pace. So I just wonder, like, how important do you think it is to have that kind of speed that you would have developed to train for that 100-kilometer versus the pace you'd be doing for 24 hours? So was your training different for that 100-kilometer race then than it would have been for what you did at the 8 weeks leading into the 24 hour?
So difference, it's not much. Maybe I just do more mileage before 24 hours, but the speed work, it's like the same. I can explain for my plan. For example, in Kenya, I do long runs 2 times per week. I do must little faster training session. For example, I go to stadium on Tuesdays. I do 10 times by 1 kilometer fast, about my 90% of my maximum, and with small rest. Other day in Thursdays, for example, I do a little slower, but fast, about 2-3 kilometers, a few times, 5, 7, maybe 7 times. So before 24 hours, I did the same things. Just in long runs, I improved my mileage. First time I ran more than 50 kilometers per training. I did some 60 kilometers, 70. So I think that in ultra running from 100 kilometers to 24 hours, training plan is almost the same. Just you need to try to boost your speed, maybe stamina, and everything will be okay.
Mm-hmm. When you do those 50-kilometer training sessions, were you doing them faster for the 100-kilometer buildup then too, or were you still doing those at around the same pace as you did for the 24-hour?
No, I try to run faster than my average pace because imitation of I don't know, tiredness must be better, because if you run slow 50K, it's nothing. You need to try to put your body to feel the tiredness. So I like run fast because I first of all I want to end my training so much faster because I want to eat. I'm in shape. I'm lazy guy, so I want to finish my job, my work, and go to eat, go to sleep. So it keeps me going faster. That's the main thing.
That's funny. That's funny. I understand that. I'm sure you were probably hungry more often than not during some of those training buildups. So that brings me kind of to my next question, and one that a lot of people who recognized that I was going to have you on this podcast wanted me to ask you. And it was if you can just kind of walk us through what a typical day looked like when you were putting together those final 8 weeks before your most recent 24-hour world record when you were training over in Kenya. Can you just explain to us, like, when you wake up in the morning, what is kind of the process that you go through the course of that day before you go to bed again that night?
First of all, I like run on empty stomach. So I wake up, drink a cup of coffee, and prepare for my first training. If it long runs, it's about 40 to 60, for example, kilometers. Pace about 4, maybe 350 per kilometer. I don't know what is in miles, sorry. I take with me about, if I live in Kenya, I try to take with me about 1 liter of liquids, because when you run, you can full anything. You need just keep everything with you. Maybe a few cookies, and after that, when I finished, I came back. I do some stretching, and so, like I said, a lazy guy. I do normally stretching, just imitation of stretching. Then I go eat, sleep. If I had gym day, so I do some exercises. I like do exercise with my body, not with weights, but sometimes I go to gym, work with weights. I do normally exercises, for example, for squats, maybe for calves, some jumps, maybe I don't know, special exercises for runners. Nothing special. And then I go back, eat, sleep, and evening recovery running. It's about 10, 15 kilometers, and day is over. I scroll some internet, maybe play some games, and go sleep.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That was one thing I was curious about, was when you were doing those training camps, if you were taking naps during the day. I had to, in my mind, I was thinking you were doing that first run and then definitely sleeping a bit in between those sessions in order to be able to kind of put in that level of volume. And it sounds like, if I understood you correctly, you're sometimes taking 2 naps during the day.
Yeah, sometimes yes, but mostly I have just
Mhm.
one.
Yeah. So you're literally eating, sleeping, and running for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, like everybody, run, sleep, eat, repeat. Yes,
There you go. You are the living embodiment of that quote.
yeah,
They should probably put your name on all of those shirts going forward.
yes.
Hey folks, just a quick reminder that this episode's sponsors include Ultimate Direction and their hydration products, bottles, belts, packs, backpacks, vests, and LMNT's electrolyte powder. If you would like to support the show by checking out these products, head over to zachbitter.com/HPO sponsors. Oh, this is great. So I want to get into a little bit of the kind of how things played out at the European 24-hour championships for you, because I think this one looked a little bit different to me following along. Uh, this year, your previous world records are marked with kind of a common theme from what I gather. And it was like kind of just a slight positive split where you start off a little bit faster than world record pace. You'd slow maybe a little bit, but not much at all. I think most people looking at your splits for your previous world records would consider it about as perfectly executed of a pacing strategy as one could imagine for running 24 hours or 100 miles or 100 kilometers. But for this time, for the 24-hour world championships, when you started, that first like 4 to 6 hours, you were running a fair bit faster than you were the previous time when you broke Giannis's record. And I would say about 25%, the first 25% of that race, you were running like mid 6 minute mile pace. Was that kind of part of the strategy to go out a little bit faster, or was in your mind, were you thinking, what were you thinking? What was the difference there or the strategy there, if anything?
Now I think I have few mistakes. First of all, it's bad tactics. Yes, as you said, it was too fast for first half. So, but I thought that I can take this pace for first 12 hours, but take don't keep in my mind that it's World European Championship. There will be a lot of people, and you need to change your how to explain. Um, can you help me, Zach?
So you're trying to get separated so you weren't running in a big
Yeah,
group? Okay.
yeah. The group you need to run zigzags because you need to uh, run through the people.
Hmm.
Yeah, this time lap was, I think it's very hard because they had some very um, shape turns. You need almost stop and run again. It's very hard. After 12 hours, I understood that pace was too fast, and I have a broke point about after 12 hours, and other half was very painful. I suffered. Just minds that big job was did, and I can't stop. I need to run, but it was very hard. What part?
Hmm.
Um, so if you want to show your best PB, you need to choose some small competition and try to show there, but not in World Championship and European Championship, because it was length about 1,500 meters, and we had more than 300 people. You understand that
Hmm.
everyone have just 4 meters for each other.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'll just add some stuff to that too, because I know, like, as you know, I've run races on tracks before, like yourself, like 400-meter tracks and really short loops, and that is the hardest thing to figure out for I think people who are either running a shorter distance on a day like that with a group of people running a further distance, or if you're just the fastest person out there, is you're gonna actually run further than what your end distance shows because you're going around people. So it sounds like you were trying to kind of separate yourself from that a little bit. And then I did look at that course. It did not look like a fast course, and it looks fast comparative to like what we see in like the trail running community. But as far as running world records on flat terrain, it wasn't the easiest course I've ever seen. And you know, you still persevered, and that got my head thinking. I started thinking, well, if Sorokin decides to go out on a more consistent course that doesn't have that 180-degree turn, and you start out at like 7 minutes per mile, you might run 205 to almost 210 miles. Like that's not outside of the realm of possibility. So are you already thinking about what am I going to do next? Are you going to try to get on, like, say, maybe a track with less people? And then is there a number in your head that you think I can hit that?
Yeah, I have some numbers in my head. So other side, after this European Championship, I now very motivated to run again that 24 hours, maybe somewhere else. In numbers, I think that 230 kilometers, it's not a limit. I can try to beat this distance. In miles, I think it's two, yes, 200, maybe 8, 10 miles.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about, and I look forward to seeing you try that in the future because it's going to be fun to watch someone. I think it's everyone who followed you took any time to look at the course, took any time to look at your pacing strategy. I think realizes like just a couple things that are going to be pretty easy for you to fix puts you past 200 miles for sure. And I think everyone is very excited to see the day that someone crosses that 200-mile mark for 24 hours. It'll be a historic day for sure. Um, I want to jump into some of the things that you're doing along the way because when you're running 24 hours, there is the physical component that you take care of with training. There's the mental component that you take care of with training and then in the race itself. But you're out there for so long, you also have to take care of certain needs like eating and drinking. So, do you follow any particular way of eating while you're out there running, or what does your fueling strategy look like when you're out there running 24 hours?
The main plan always the same. I try to eat about 400 kilocalories per hour and drink about 500 milliliters of liquids. It I like sandwiches. All junk food I have all the time. For example, sandwiches, chocolate bars, cookies, chips, bananas, oranges, colas, tears, and some brand of isotonic drinks, some gels, and I try to mix every time because if you eat the same food after a few hours, your stomach will say, sorry, I can't eat anymore like this. So I try to do mix. At, in the beginning, everything okay, stomach work correctly. I can think normally, but after 12 hours, everything is changing. Stomach was tired, have tiredness. I can think normally. So support is now. Now it's time to work for of supporters. That's where last competition. I have some secrets. Now I can explain you. I run with beer. So Camila one time sends me that she runs with beer. Now I try this time, and I think beer was helped me to little low my pain in my legs. So it was very good. I run with beer this time.
The secret weapon for the world records of 24 hours seems to be beer for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Yes.
That is funny. I want to talk a little more about nutrition as well. I know you mentioned when we were talking about your training in Kenya that you would do your long sessions in the morning with an empty stomach because you preferred it that way. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're eating during the day for those trainings when you're not running? And then is there a purpose to not eating before that long run, or is it just because that's the way you feel best going out into those runs with an empty stomach?
So my diet is not different when I run or not run, but I have problem with my overweight because I'm after kayaking. I have a more muscle than average runner. So I always fight with my overweight. Before races, I need to keep diet. So I accept um, all easy, fast carbs. So I know you take a keto diet. It's true. Yes.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of lower carbohydrate for sure.
Mhm. Okay. So I try to don't eat sweets and fast carbs and try to grow my weight down. But in average day, I eat everything. I can after a long run. eat 1 liter of ice cream or eat all pack of pasta, half kilogram. So it doesn't nothing for me. I
Yeah.
like to eat.
Yeah, and for some context for people paying attention or not paying attention, I should say, to your training, when you're in training, you are hitting 200-mile weeks fairly frequently during that last buildup. I actually looked at your final 8 weeks leading into the race itself, and on average, you were over 200 miles per week on an average. So I think when you say you can eat anything, you literally probably can, given the energy output that you're giving for that sort of stuff. And then it sounds like once you get to the end of training and begin tapering for the race, you pay a little closer attention to diet so that you don't kind of overfeed yourself in those few weeks before the race itself.
Uh, can you explain that about my nutrition before? Can you explain please your
Sure.
question?
Yeah, I was just looking at I think it was less of a question and more just kind of letting the listeners know that like the context of what you're doing here. It's like you're training for those 8 weeks. You're oftentimes running like 200 miles in a week on average. So like the amount of food that you eat or require to kind of put in that training is very high. But then when you get a couple weeks out from the race and you want to start resting, you start paying a little closer to how much you're eating.
Um, I try to I try to just like I said, don't eat sweets,
Mm-hmm.
don't eat more easy fast carbs. So I maybe my diet it's more like keto diet, but and I understand that it's very fast. My weight is growing down, but before the race, I try to put in my body a lot of carbs. It's like maybe placebo, maybe no, but I feel full of carbs. I understand that my muscle is very powerful for running. So that's all I think.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I have just one more training question before I get into some, I think, fun future questions for you. And the one training question is like following you on Strava, and I recommend anyone listening to this podcast who really is interested in your style to go check out your Strava profile and follow you on there, as well as your Instagram page, because you do share a lot of your training on there as well. And it looks like you're putting in training that I would consider like very, very high volume. Is that something that you think you can continue to do, or is that level of high volume training unsustainable for many, many years?
Uh, yes, my mileage is increased years of the years. I try to run more and more and more, but I don't think that my job it's very high because I took some some plans from cross country skiers. They work very hard, very lot. For example, Norwegian cross skiers do works about 6 hours per day. They run so many hours on the legs. So if they can, ultra runners need to do something like that. Very high, very much, many hours on the legs. So it's I think it's very boost for your results. Of course, you need to try avoid your injury, but you need to do very many hours on the legs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have proven that it works. So, so I think that's really interesting. Are you doing anything like massage and stuff to kind of help with the soreness? Because I think the one difference between, say, like the skiers and runners is the impact of running is higher. Do you notice that the impact of running is makes it difficult to do those type of training weeks, or have you found that just doing it gradually, like you explained, has you prepared to be able to handle that at a better rate than maybe some people can?
So it's very indeed individual. Of course, everybody has pick what you have, what your body can take. But Yes, of course, I have a physiotherapist who watch me if I have any problems with my legs, with my muscles on joints. So I go to him, and he is doing massages and so on. Yes.
Excellent. Let's hop into some future efforts that I'm curious about for you. So when I kind of think of like the races that you have sort of preferred or targeted to date, there are a couple that stand out in my head as ones that I think would be really interesting to see you do, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about them, or if there's any other ones that you're interested in. But as a fan of the sport, there's two events that I selfishly want to see you compete at. The first one is the Spartathlon. I know you've run Spartathlon and won it already, but I can't help but think that your 22 hours at Spartathlon in, was it 2019, I think? Is
18.
2018. I have a sneaking suspicion you can maybe run a couple hours faster now. So I'm curious if you have any plans of going back to Spartathlon. And then a second one is the Comrades Marathon, which is relatively short compared to what you've done with the 24-hour stuff, but not too far off from 100 kilometers. And I think your 100-kilometer world record would indicate that you would be highly competitive at a race like the Comrades Marathon. Uh, what are your thoughts about those two events? Are they ones that you think you maybe will do in the future?
Yeah, I thought about comrades. Yes, maybe next year I try to run there. It's my I don't have a plan for next year, but I think it's two things we want to do is my team. It's a comrades marathon, and it's not actually project, but maybe in the spring we try to do like a Kipchoge did, try to run 100 sub 6. It will be a big project from us. About Spartathlon, maybe, but I think not this second year, but other, yeah, possibly yes, but I don't think now about Spartathlon. Those the two things, and of course, 24 hours. We have unfinished deal with this distance.
That seems to be the one where I think you really want to see where your limit is at, and I am equally as excited, I think, to see where your limit is at 24 hours. So I'm glad that you're keeping that one on the table. If we want to think even further than say the next 1 or 2 years, I find it really interesting with ultra marathon because you can always go further. And as we age as athletes, some of the shorter events become a little more difficult. You get to a point where you can no longer run as fast as you could when you were younger, but there are other opportunities there. So far, you've run races that go up to 24 hours. But do you think at some point in your career, you will start challenging any of Kuros's multi-day timed events like 48 hours, 72 hours, or 6-day events?
Yes, I thought about 48 hours. Maybe in future I need to try to do it, but now I can't understand. My brain can't explain how can run more than 24 hours. Then when you run 24 hours, it's so tough, and it's so suffering. Wow, one more 24 hours. It's this mind killing me. I don't know, but I need to try. I need to try it 48 hours, for example. Yes.
Awesome. Well, it's very exciting to hear what you have planned, how you've prepared to date, and what it actually has taken for you to kind of achieve what you have achieved so far. Before I let you go, though, I would love to have you share with the listeners like where they can find you. Is there a website or some social media places that you are active on that people can follow along?
So I have a YouTube channel. It's named like Aleksandr Sorokin. If you try to find, you will find. So in Strava, I have the same Aleksandr Sorokin, and Instagram, Facebook, the same ultra runner Aleksandr Sorokin. If you put it in the Google, for example, you will try. Will find me. So please.
Awesome. And I will link all that stuff to the show notes and on the show episode landing page as well. So anyone who wants to follow Aleksandr and find out what he's up to and watch him go after more records as the years go on, you can do that. This has been great. I'm honored that you took some time after, just recently having a race that you did to come on and talk with me for a bit and kind of share some of your experience and things like that. But if there's anything else you want to share, feel free to do it. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Zach, for you invite me. Thank you.
Take care. Hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter.